Have you ever felt like you were in a desert, surrounded by dreams and opportunities that seemed unreachable, as if everything you once desired had slipped through your fingers? Today, I want to tell you that this feeling is not the end of your story. There is a powerful message waiting for you. Restoration is closer than you imagine. What seemed lost forever is actually the beginning of a new story filled with miracles and multiplied blessings. Imagine for a moment that everything the enemy tried to take from you, God is transforming into abundance. You are about to experience a supernatural change, a moment where everything will be restored in ways you never expected. Get ready, because God has something great for you. Before we continue, I invite you to take the first step on this journey of faith. Write in the comments, "God restores my life." Make this declaration your act of faith and allow it to transform your perspective and your life. Even in the most difficult moments, remember that God is by your side, strengthening every aspect of your being. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now and help us share this message with more people who need to hear it. Let's begin this journey toward restoration and victory. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, the great locust and the young locust, the other locusts and the locust swarm, my great army that I sent among you. Joel 2:25. Do you feel like you've lost everything? Life can hit us hard sometimes. The dreams we had and the relationships we cherished seem to vanish like sand slipping through our fingers. In those moments, we ask ourselves, what happened? Can I recover what I've lost? Is it possible to restore everything I've left behind? The book of Joel contains a divine promise that speaks directly to our hearts. When we find ourselves in these dark moments, God promises, "I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten." What does this mean for you today? Let's delve deeper into this verse and uncover a powerful teaching that can transform our perspective and renew our hope. To understand the promise, we must first imagine the devastation experienced by the people of Israel in Joel's time. A plague of locusts had ravaged their fields, destroying the fruits of their labor, their crops, and their livelihood. In the Bible, locusts represent more than just insects. They symbolize everything the enemy can steal from our lives. They represent loss, ruin, wasted years, and broken hopes. Maybe you feel like this today. Perhaps the locust in your life has been a failed relationship, an opportunity that never materialized, or a dream that seems to have died. Days, months, even years have passed, and the pain of those losses remains in your heart. It might seem like you'll never recover what's gone, but this verse is a promise not only of material restoration, but of something much deeper. God says He will restore. God doesn't just say, "I will give you new blessings." No, He says He will repay the years that were stolen from you. Think about that for a moment. God doesn't just give new things. He restores what was lost. Even the years of pain, sadness, or frustration can be restored. This isn't just about recovering material things. It's about the profound transformation God can bring to your life. What does it mean for God to restore the years? It means He can take your past, those broken situations, those moments of suffering, and give them a new purpose. Everything that seemed wasted can be redeemed in God's hands. He can bring back the joy, peace, and purpose you thought you had lost forever. God not only promises that you will eat until you are full, verse 26, but also that you will never again be ashamed. This is significant. Often shame accompanies our losses. We feel like failures, as if we've fallen short somewhere. We wonder if others will judge us, or if we're worth less because of what we've been through. But in God's kingdom, there is no place for shame. When He restores, He does so completely. The past no longer has power over you. God removes the shame and fills you with honor and purpose. What once caused pain, He turns into a testimony of His faithfulness and love. This promise in Joel 2:25-26 is a reminder that our God is a God of hope, restoration, and second chances. No matter how much you've lost or how long you've felt devastated, God has the power to restore every part of your life. What seems like destruction today can be transformed into blessing tomorrow. Remember that Jesus came into this world to restore what sin and darkness had destroyed. His sacrifice on the cross is the ultimate proof that no matter how broken we feel, He can make us new. Through Christ, we receive not only restoration of what was lost in this life, but also the promise of eternal life. How can you experience God's restoration? Trust His timing. God's restoration doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes the process takes time. But trust that God is never late. His plan is perfect. Surrender your past. For God to restore, you must give Him your pain, your failures, and your losses. Stop clinging to the past and surrender it to Him. Even when you don't see immediate results, keep trusting. God always fulfills His promises, and restoration comes to those who wait on Him. Restoration often comes with internal transformation. Allow God to guide you in the steps you need to take to move forward into the fullness of His plan for your life. Today, God says to you, I will repay you for the years that have been lost. No matter how devastated you feel, no matter how much you've lost, God is working to give back everything the enemy tried to destroy. Where you once saw ruins, God will bring life. Where you felt shame, God will honor you. Stay tuned and don't miss the next point. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. We continue with more. But I will restore you to health and heal your wounds, declares the Lord, because you are called an outcast, Zion for whom no one cares. Jeremiah 30:17. Do you feel hurt or abandoned? There are moments in life when we feel deeply wounded, not just physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. Sometimes the scars are not visible on the skin, but lie within the heart. Cruel words from others, the betrayal of someone we trusted, missed opportunities, or broken dreams can leave wounds that seem impossible to heal. In those moments, it may feel like God is far away, that He no longer hears our cries, or worse, that we have been forgotten. If you have ever felt this way, the verse from Jeremiah 30:17 is a promise for you. Here, God speaks with clarity and power. I will restore you to health and heal your wounds. This is not an empty or fleeting promise. It is a firm declaration of God's power to restore what is broken, heal what seems irreparable, and bring new life to places of pain and abandonment. God sees your wounds. Before you can experience God's healing, it is important to understand that He sees your wounds. No pain escapes His eyes. Sometimes we may feel like we are fighting alone, as if our suffering does not matter. But God is present in each of those moments. He knows the details of every tear you have shed, of every wound you carry in your soul. God saw His people, Israel, when they were mistreated, rejected, and humiliated by other nations. They were called outcasts and forgotten. Perhaps you identify with those words. Maybe you've experienced rejection, isolation, or the feeling that no one cares about you. But God, through this verse, assures you that He has not cast you away or forgotten you. He has seen your pain and is ready to act. God is the healer of the deepest wounds. When God says He will bring health and heal our wounds, He is not speaking of superficial healing. It is not merely about temporarily relieving pain or covering the wounds with a bandage. God promises complete and profound healing that reaches the roots of our pain. This kind of healing is more than just improvement. It is total restoration. God's promise is that no matter how deep our wounds or how long we have suffered, He can completely restore us. Perhaps you have been carrying the pain of a loss, a failure, or a disappointment for years. Maybe you've tried to heal on your own, but the wounds remain. However, God, the great healer, has the power to heal those wounds in a way no one else can. In Jeremiah 30:17, God speaks of Zion as the outcast, the one no one remembers. Have you ever felt like that? As if no one remembers you, as if you have been set aside while others move forward. This verse reminds us that even if others have forgotten or set you aside, God never will. In fact, He specializes in restoring what others have discarded. God doesn't just heal the physical, He also mends what is broken inside. If you have felt ignored or undervalued by others, God sees you with love and dignity. He not only remembers you, but also has a plan for you, a plan to heal you, lift you up, and restore what others deemed lost. God's healing is holistic. The healing God promises is holistic. It is not limited to the physical. When God says, "I will heal your wounds," He is speaking to every aspect of our lives. God heals our emotional wounds, our broken hearts, our weary minds, and our exhausted spirits. Maybe you've suffered disappointments that have left deep scars inside you, or betrayals that have broken your trust. Perhaps you feel trapped in a cycle of emotional pain that seems impossible to escape. God's healing covers all of that. His restorative power brings peace to our minds, renews our emotions, and strengthens our spirits. What seemed impossible to heal in your own strength, God can make possible. No wound is too great for Him, and no pain is too deep for His love to reach. One wonderful aspect of the promise in Jeremiah 30:17 is that healing is just the beginning. When God heals, He also restores. He doesn't just heal our wounds, He gives back what we have lost in the process. Perhaps you have lost years to illness, difficult circumstances, or emotional suffering. But God doesn't just want to heal your wounds. He wants to restore the years that pain has stolen. He wants to restore your joy, your purpose, and your peace. God is an expert at returning what pain has tried to take away. After healing your wounds, He leads you to a place of restoration where you can walk again with hope and the certainty that the best chapter of your life is yet to be written. Believe in God's promise. God has said He will heal your wounds. Sometimes circumstances may make this seem impossible, but God is faithful. His promise is true, and He will fulfill it. Healing is not always instantaneous. Sometimes it is a process. But as you stay close to God, He works in you day by day, restoring what has been broken. Trust in His love. God doesn't heal you just because He can. He does it because He loves you. His love for you is deep and unconditional. In His love, He is working for your good. Today, God says to you, "I will restore you to health and heal your wounds." No matter how deep your wounds, how many scars you carry, or how long you have suffered, God's promise is true, and His healing is on the way. God is able to heal and fully restore you. He has not forgotten or rejected you. What others have left behind, God takes into His hands and transforms into something beautiful. I invite you to continue delving into these transformative teachings. Subscribe to our channel and join us on this journey of faith, hope, and wisdom. Not only will you receive content that enriches your life, but you will also become part of a community seeking to grow and walk with God. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and uphold me with a willing spirit. Psalm 51, verse 12. Have you lost your joy? This is a deep question you may have never directly asked yourself, but it could resonate in the depths of your heart. Do you remember a time in your life when you had more joy, more peace, more enthusiasm for living? Perhaps you recall the freshness of those early days when you first came to know God, a time when everything seemed clearer, His love filled every corner of your life, and you walked with an inexplicable peace and joy. But now, what has happened? Perhaps over time that joy has faded. The daily routine, past mistakes, or the burdens of life may have extinguished that inner fire. If you feel like something has been lost within you, Psalm 51 verse 12 is a plea that reflects what we often lack and simultaneously offers a powerful hope. God can restore the joy we have lost. What has stolen your joy? David, the author of this psalm, knew exactly what it meant to lose joy. In the context of this verse, David had sinned gravely against God, and his heart was broken. He had betrayed his relationship with God by committing adultery and ordering a murder. His sin led him to experience deep guilt and sadness that disconnected him from the joy he once knew in his walk with God. While your situation may not be the same as David's, the principle remains. Sin, poor decisions, and even life's burdens can rob us of the joy that comes from an intimate relationship with God. Sometimes it's not about a great sin, but an accumulation of small things that gradually distance us from our original joy. Perhaps it's resentment, unforgiveness, or simply the exhaustion of daily life that has dimmed that joy in you. So, what has stolen your joy right now? Is it worry about the future? The weight of your mistakes? Emotional fatigue? If you feel this way, you are not alone. David felt the same, which is why, in this psalm, he pleads with God to restore the joy he once experienced, the joy of salvation. David doesn't ask for just any kind of joy. He specifically requests the joy of your salvation. This is important. The joy David speaks of doesn't come from life's circumstances or personal achievements. This joy stems from the assurance that we are saved, forgiven, and unconditionally loved by God. Do you remember the feeling of knowing you were forgiven by God? That moment when you understood that despite your mistakes, God accepted you with love and gave you a new chance. That is the joy David longs to experience again, and it is the joy God wants to restore in your life today. This joy doesn't depend on what happens around you. Your circumstances may not change immediately, but when the joy of salvation returns to your heart, everything else seems to carry less weight. It's a joy born from knowing that no matter what you've done or what you face, your identity is secure in Christ. You are saved, you are loved, and you have a purpose in God. How to restore your joy? The key to this verse lies in David's humility. He acknowledges that he cannot restore this joy on his own. It's not something we can create by our own strength. David doesn't say, "I'll find a way to be happy again." He pleads with God, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation." In other words, David recognizes that he needs God to give back what he has lost. This is a powerful reminder for us. When we lose our joy, when life's weight becomes unbearable, we must do what David did. Perhaps you've tried to fill the void with temporary things, more work, more entertainment, more distractions, but none of that will restore the joy that only God can bring. Have you taken the time to cry out to God for the joy you've lost? Have you acknowledged that you need His help to be restored? Sometimes we are tempted to fix everything on our own, but this verse teaches us that the joy of salvation can only be restored by God Himself. David doesn't only ask God to restore his lost joy, he also asks Him to uphold him with a willing spirit. This is crucial. It's not just about a temporary restoration of joy, but about a change in our hearts that sustains us day by day. Sometimes joy can feel fleeting, like an emotion that comes and goes depending on circumstances. But David knows that the key to maintaining this joy is to be upheld by the Spirit of God. We need the Holy Spirit so that even in difficult moments, our joy is anchored in something much deeper than fleeting emotions. A constant source of joy, asking God to sustain us with His Spirit, means recognizing that we cannot walk alone. We need His constant presence in our lives, guiding us, strengthening our souls, and reminding us again and again of the joy of His salvation. Are you ready to recover your joy? Today, God invites you to ask Him to restore what you've lost. No matter how far you feel you've strayed, No matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how long it has been since you last experienced that deep joy, God is ready to restore it in your life. God can give everything back to you. All you need to do is what David did. Acknowledge your need, humble yourself before God, and cry out, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation." Maybe the weight of the past has been hard to bear, or perhaps worries about the future have stolen your peace. But today, you can start anew. Today, God is ready to restore your joy. Psalm 51 verse 12 reminds us of a powerful truth. No matter what you've been through, the joy that comes from God can always be restored. You are not meant to live without joy. You are not destined to carry the weight of the past forever. God invites you to once again experience the fullness of His love and the joy of knowing that you are His forgiven and beloved child. Instead of your shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance. And so, you will inherit a double portion in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. Isaiah 61:7. Have you felt dishonored or ashamed? Shame is one of the hardest feelings to endure. It makes us feel small, unworthy, and insufficient. Sometimes shame arises from our own decisions. Other times it comes from situations beyond our control. Betrayal by someone we trusted, hurtful words from someone we loved, or failures that seem to define us in front of others. The weight of shame can be paralyzing, making us believe we will never rise again. But in Isaiah 61:7, God offers a radical promise. Instead of shame, you will receive a double portion. Can you imagine that? Instead of carrying shame, God promises to fill you with double honor. He will not only restore what you lost, but give you twice as much. This is a powerful promise of restoration, dignity, and joy. God does not want you to remain trapped in the past, but to walk in freedom, knowing that in Him you will not only be restored, but abundantly honored. What has dishonored you? We have all faced moments of shame or dishonor, perhaps a poor decision whose consequences you still bear, or a broken relationship that has left deep scars. Maybe you've been publicly humiliated, or perhaps you carry hidden shame, something only you and God know. In those moments, shame whispers lies. You're not enough. You never will be. This is all you deserve. It makes us feel unworthy, as if our value has been diminished or destroyed. But Isaiah 61:7 is a reminder that God has the final word over your life. Shame does not define who you are. God does. And His declaration over you is clear. Instead of shame, you will receive honor. God gives you more than you lost. One of the most astonishing aspects of this promise is that God not only removes shame, but gives you double what you lost. If you have endured moments of dishonor or shame, God does not merely want to restore you to where you were before. His promise is to give you more than you had, double. This concept of double honor teaches us something fundamental about God's character. He is a God of abundance, not scarcity. When He restores, He does so fully. When He gives back what was lost, He does so in excess. The story of Job is a perfect example of this truth. Job lost everything, his family, possessions, and health, but when God restored him, He gave him twice as much as he had lost. The same can happen in your life. God doesn't just want to restore what was stolen, destroyed, or damaged. He wants to give you more than you could imagine, more than you think you deserve, and more than you thought you had lost forever. From dishonor to everlasting joy. The verse doesn't just speak of receiving double honor instead of shame. It also speaks of rejoicing in your inheritance and experiencing everlasting joy. In God, our inheritance is much more than material things. Our inheritance is abundant life in Christ, a life filled with peace, purpose, and eternal joy. God invites you to leave behind dishonor and walk in the joy He has prepared for you. This joy is not temporary or circumstantial, it is everlasting. Have you felt trapped in a situation where joy seems like a distant reality? Maybe your circumstances have been difficult, or the pain of past experiences has stolen the joy from your heart. God's promise is that even in the midst of what you've lost, He can fill your life with joy, a joy that doesn't depend on your circumstances, but on your relationship with Him. The everlasting joy mentioned in Isaiah 61:7 is not a fleeting emotion. It is a deep satisfaction and peace that comes from knowing your life is in the hands of a loving God who is working for your good and who will never leave you. It is a joy that overcomes the wounds of the past and transforms sorrow into rejoicing. How to receive God's double honor. If you feel that shame has defined part of your life, you may be wondering, how can I receive this double honor that God promises? Here are a few steps to allow God to do this restorative work in your life. 1. Recognize your need for restoration. Like the people of Israel in the context of Isaiah 61, we need to acknowledge that we cannot restore ourselves by our own strength. We need divine intervention. Admitting that you have been carrying shame is the first step toward allowing God to replace it with honor. 2. Accept God's grace. Sometimes the greatest obstacle to receiving God's honor is that we don't believe we deserve it. But God's grace is not based on what we deserve. It is based on His unconditional love. He wants to give you double, not because you've earned it, but because He loves you. 3. Let go of the past. Shame is often tied to past wounds, things we have done or things others have done to us. Part of walking in God's restoration is releasing those wounds. Forgive yourself or those who have hurt you and allow God to close those wounds. 4. Trust in God's faithfulness. Restoration doesn't always happen immediately, but God is faithful to His word. He has promised to give you double honor for your shame, and that promise is true. Trust that He is working in your life, even when you can't see the final result. God is ready to turn your shame into honor, your sorrow into joy, and your loss into abundance. Trust in His promise and allow Him to restore and transform every part of your life. When God speaks of a double portion in the Bible, it is not merely a physical measure. It represents a spiritual blessing that exceeds all our expectations. In Isaiah 61:7, God promises that those who have faced dishonor will not only be restored, but will receive abundant blessings. If you have walked through seasons of pain or shame, prepare to receive not only healing, but more than you could ever imagine. This is the power of the gospel. Where the world sees shame, God sees an opportunity to reveal His glory. Where the enemy sought to bring destruction, God brings abundance. And where you felt loss, God offers you a double portion of His blessing. Isaiah 61:7 teaches us a powerful truth. Shame does not have the final word in your life. God promises to replace shame with honor, disgrace with blessing, and pain with everlasting joy. No matter how deep your wound, no matter how much you've lost, God has the power to restore it all and give you double what you lost. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. Zechariah 9:12. Have you ever felt trapped with no way out in life? We all experience moments when we feel confined, as if we are in an invisible prison. It may not be a literal jail, but it could be the chains of frustration, hopelessness, fear, or uncertainty. Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you try, nothing seems to improve? Perhaps you're stuck in a job that doesn't fulfill you, a relationship that has left you empty, or a difficult financial situation that feels unsolvable. In those moments, the walls around us seem to close in and the light of hope fades. Yet, in Zechariah 9:12, God gives us an incredible promise. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. This verse is powerful because it speaks directly to those seasons of life when we feel like prisoners of our circumstances, but it invites us to return to hope, to believe in what God can do. The term prisoners of hope sounds contradictory, doesn't it? How can someone be a prisoner and still have hope? In reality, this concept teaches us something incredible. Even when our circumstances make us feel trapped, hope in God sets us free. Being a prisoner of hope means that, despite the struggles, we never stop believing that God can intervene, that He can change things, and that the end of the story has not yet been written. Have you ever been in a situation where everything seemed lost, yet deep down there was still a small spark of hope? Maybe you're in that situation right now. Perhaps you don't say it out loud, or you don't even dare to share it with others, but deep inside, something tells you, this can't be the end. God has something better for me. That small spark is what makes you a prisoner of hope, and God calls you to return to that hope, to not lose it, because something great is on the way. The verse begins with an invitation. Return to your fortress. What does this mean in daily life? It means returning to the place where our hope is renewed, where we find refuge, protection, and strength. This fortress is not a physical location, but the presence of God. He is our fortress. When everything else fails, He is the safe place we can turn to when the world seems to collapse around us. In daily life, returning to the fortress can look different for each of us. For some, it might mean spending time in prayer, surrendering our worries to God. For others, it could mean opening the Bible and finding in its pages words of encouragement and promises of life. Or perhaps it's simply a moment of stillness, acknowledging that even if circumstances don't change immediately, God is with us, and that gives us the strength to keep going. Think of common situations, when work stress becomes overwhelming, when family problems make you feel like you can't go on, or when the dreams you once had seem to have disappeared. In those moments, returning to the fortress of God is remembering that He is your refuge, that you don't have to carry all those burdens alone. God invites you to find rest in Him and trust that even when things seem dark, He remains in control. The most exciting part of this verse is the final promise. Even now, I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. God doesn't just promise to restore you, He promises to give you twice what you've lost. Perhaps you've experienced significant losses in your life. Time, opportunities, relationships, or even dreams. Maybe you feel like you've spent years investing in something that ultimately didn't work out, or suffered wounds that seem too deep to heal. But here is God's promise. He will not only give back what was lost, He will give you more. Imagine working hard for something, only for it to vanish suddenly. The frustration and sadness can be overwhelming, but God says, I will give you double. This doesn't necessarily mean everything will return to the way it was, but it does mean He will bring greater blessings. Perhaps the lost opportunity will be replaced by something even better, or the pain you endured will be used to bring more joy and purpose in the future. God is a God of abundance, and when He restores, He does so generously. We can see this promise reflected in everyday stories. Think of someone who lost a job and after a period of uncertainty found an opportunity far better than they could have imagined, or someone who endured a painful relationship but later discovered true and healthy love elsewhere. Or perhaps someone who faced a failure in their career or studies only to find a completely new and more fulfilling path. God's promise is true. He will restore you, and He will do so abundantly. Trust in His timing, return to His presence, and hold on to the hope that He has great things in store for you. In moments of loss, it's easy to feel defeated, but God reminds us that He is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. He is preparing a restoration greater than we can imagine. How can you embrace this promise? If you feel trapped in a difficult situation today, if it seems like doors have closed or things aren't going as you hoped, this verse is for you. God is calling you to return to hope, to His fortress. No matter how trapped you feel, no matter how many losses you've suffered, God promises to restore you abundantly. To embrace this promise, start by turning back to God. Return to the source of your hope. Let Him be your refuge in the midst of the storm. You don't have to have all the answers. Just trust that He is with you. Don't give up. Being a prisoner of hope means that even when things look difficult, you continue to believe that God is working. No matter how many times you fall, rise again, knowing that God is in control. Wait for the restoration. Restoration may not come immediately, but it will come. God has promised to restore double, and His word is faithful. God calls you a prisoner of hope because He knows your situation is not permanent. The promise in Zechariah 9:12 is clear. God will restore you double. Whatever you've lost, whatever you feel has been taken from you, God is ready to restore it abundantly. Don't lose hope. Don't give up. If you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and help us bring these videos to bless many more lives. Let's continue. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Have you ever wondered what the purpose of your life is? We all go through moments where we pause and think, what's next for me? Am I on the right path? What will my future be like? Maybe you're in a season of uncertainty, wondering if things will get better or if you'll ever achieve your dreams. Sometimes challenges and disappointments make us question if God truly has a plan for us or if we're just wandering aimlessly. In Jeremiah 29:11, God gives us a powerful promise. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. This verse is like a light in the darkness, a reminder that God not only knows our future, but also has good plans for us. Even when we don't understand what's happening in the present, we can trust that God is working for our good. It's easy to lose sight of this truth when things don't go as we expect. Perhaps you've experienced failures, breakups, or situations that didn't turn out as planned. In those moments, our future may seem blurry and our opportunities may appear to have vanished. However, Jeremiah reminds us that God has a specific plan for each of us. And the best part is, it's not just any plan. God Himself says they are plans to prosper us, not to harm us. His intention is not to see you suffer or wander aimlessly. He has a purpose for your life, one filled with hope. Trusting in God's plans, even if you can't see it clearly right now, remember that when God gave this promise in Jeremiah 29:11, the people of Israel were in a difficult situation. They had been exiled to Babylon, far from their land and everything they knew. It was a time of confusion and pain for them. In the midst of that chaos, God tells them that even though they feel lost now, He has a plan for them, a plan of prosperity, a plan that includes hope and a future. Sometimes, our current circumstances can make us feel far from God's plan. Maybe you're in a job that doesn't fulfill you, a relationship that feels stuck, or facing an economic challenge that seems unsolvable. Like the Israelites in Babylon, you might feel exiled from what was once a safe place for you. But just as He did with them, God is saying to you, I'm not finished with you yet. Even in the midst of this difficult moment, God is working in your life. You might not understand the why of everything that's happening, but you can trust the who. God, who created you and loves you, has a good plan for you. Often we have our own plans and ideas of how things should be, dreams of an easier, more direct path without obstacles. But in His wisdom, God sometimes takes us on routes we hadn't imagined, routes that prepare us for something much greater. Think of it this way. When a child wants something, they might not understand why their parents say no or why they have to wait. But parents who see the bigger picture know what's best. In the same way, God sees beyond what we can see. Even when we don't understand at the moment, we can trust that His plans are always for our good. Closed doors and God's timing. Perhaps you've found yourself in situations where the doors you wanted to open remained closed. Have you ever wondered why? It could be that God was protecting you from something you couldn't see at the time, or preparing you for a better opportunity you hadn't yet considered. God's plans don't always align with ours, but we can be sure they are always better. The promise in Jeremiah 29:11 is not just about the present, it's a promise of a future and hope. God is not limited by what you see now. He knows what's coming, and what's coming is good. Sometimes in the midst of struggles, it feels like there's no way out, no light at the end of the tunnel. But God promises that your future is filled with hope. Imagine this: you might be going through a tough time, like being in the middle of a storm at sea. Everything around you feels turbulent. The waves are high, and you feel like you might sink at any moment. But even though you can't see it, there's solid ground ahead of you. The storm won't last forever. God is leading you toward that solid ground, toward a place of peace and purpose. That is His promise, a future and a hope. Life is full of moments when plans don't work out as we hoped. Perhaps you dreamed of a specific career, but the doors closed. Maybe you invested time in a relationship that didn't work out. Or perhaps you've gone through a period of financial struggle and wonder if things will ever improve. God promises us that even when we don't understand the why now, He is working on our future. Think of someone who lost a job, but instead of giving up, trusted in God. Later, they discovered that losing that job led them to an even better opportunity, something they could never have imagined. Or someone who went through a failed relationship only to later find a healthy relationship that exceeded all their expectations. These examples reflect how God takes what seems like an ending and turns it into a new beginning filled with purpose. How can we embrace this promise? Jeremiah 29:11 calls us to trust in God's plan, even when our current circumstances don't reflect it. Here are some ways you can hold on to this promise in your daily life. 1. Trust in God's timing. Sometimes we want everything to happen immediately, but God's timing is perfect. Even when things seem delayed, God is working in your favor. Be patient and trust that His plan will unfold at the right moment. 2. Pray and seek His guidance. When you feel lost or confused, turn to God in prayer. Ask Him to show you the way and give you peace in the midst of uncertainty. He will guide you step by step. 3. Return to God's promises. When you feel discouraged, go back to God's word. Read Jeremiah 29:11 and other verses that remind you that God is working for your good, even when you can't see it. Even when things are difficult, don't lose hope. God has a future for you, and that future is full of purpose, well-being, and joy. Keep trusting. God assures you that despite your current circumstances, He has a plan for you. It's not a plan for harm, but for well-being, a plan that includes a future filled with hope. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Psalm 23:3. Do you feel drained inside? Life can be overwhelming at times. The weight of our responsibilities, worries, and failures can leave our souls worn out. We wake up each day only to face the same routine, the same challenges, and sometimes an emptiness inside that seems unfillable. Have you ever experienced that sense of emotional and spiritual exhaustion where even physical rest cannot restore what you feel deep within? In those moments, when we feel lost or drained inside, Psalm 23 verse 3 offers a powerful promise. He restores my soul. God doesn't just accompany us, He restores and renews our souls when we need it most. When everything seems dark or heavy, God acts as the shepherd who cares for His sheep, giving us rest, peace, and new energy to move forward. What does it mean that God restores our soul? The word restore in this context doesn't refer to a superficial comfort. In Hebrew, the term used here speaks of a deep renewal, returning something to its original state, or even better. It's a powerful image of how God works in our lives. He doesn't just relieve our pain temporarily, He restores us completely. Imagine dry land scorched by the blazing sun for a long time. That land needs water to come back to life, to bear fruit again. That's how our soul is during seasons of emotional or spiritual drought. God, as the Good Shepherd, comes to refresh that dry land, bringing life where there seemed to be no hope. He brings new strength, fresh encouragement, and an inner renewal that only His presence can provide. Perhaps you feel like that dry land right now. Maybe you've faced trials that have worn down your faith, your hope, or your love for others. But God promises that you don't have to remain in that state. He will restore your soul in a way that nothing in this world can. Life's wear and tear. We all face situations that drain us, relationships that hurt us, decisions that weigh on us, jobs that feel endless, and challenges that seem insurmountable. How often have you felt emotionally drained, as though you have nothing left to give? Often we try to keep going, believing we just need to be stronger or more resilient. But the truth is, we need restoration, not just more effort. Think of a phone that has been running all day without being charged. At first, it still works fine, but over time, the battery drains. By the end of the day, no matter how much you try to use it, it won't function until it's recharged. In the same way, we need to recharge our souls. We can't keep going indefinitely without rest and without seeking God to renew our strength. God is the source of that recharge for our souls. He is the one who restores our spiritual and emotional energy when we feel we can't go on. And the best news is, we don't have to do it alone. It's not just about human effort, but about depending on God, who invites us to rest in Him and let Him renew us. Guided by God's paths, the second part of the verse says, He guides me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. After restoring our souls, God doesn't leave us lost or confused. He guides us. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of God's character. He doesn't just comfort us, He shows us the way forward. Often, when we feel drained or lost, confusion takes over. We don't know what decisions to make or where to turn. But God, like a shepherd guiding His sheep, leads us on the right path, paths of righteousness. This means that if we trust Him, He will lead us down the best path, one that aligns with His will and brings us fullness and peace. A shepherd who cares. Think of how a shepherd cares for his sheep, guiding them, protecting them, and ensuring they find rest and nourishment. In the same way, God cares for you. He restores your soul, renews your strength, and leads you on a path filled with purpose, peace, and hope. No matter how tired or lost you feel, God's promise remains. He is your shepherd, and He will restore and guide you every step of the way. Sheep don't know the best path, but they trust the shepherd to lead them to green pastures and still waters. In the same way, we sometimes don't understand why certain things happen or where we're headed, but we can trust that God is always guiding us along the best path. Even when we don't comprehend it, His plan is perfect. We can see God's process of restoration and guidance in our daily lives. Maybe you've experienced a personal loss or disappointment that left you drained. Perhaps you've felt alone, carrying an emotional burden that seemed too heavy to bear. Just when you thought you couldn't go on, God brought you an inexplicable comfort. God works in many ways to restore us. It could be a moment of stillness in His presence, a song of praise that touches your heart, or simply the reminder that He is with you. In those moments, God says, I'm here, I'll guide you. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Similarly, maybe you've faced tough decisions in your life and didn't know what to do. Confusion surrounded you, and you felt that any path you chose would be the wrong one. But in the midst of that uncertainty, God opened a door or showed you an option you had never considered. That's what it means when God guides our paths, how to let God restore your soul. To experience God's restoration and allow Him to guide you, it's essential to open your heart and let Him work within you. Here are some ways to do this. 1. Take time to rest in God. Sometimes we're so busy that we don't give God the space to restore our souls. Spend time in His presence, whether through prayer, reading His Word, or simply being still and acknowledging that He is with you. 2. Don't try to carry everything on your own. God wants you to surrender your worries, fears, and failures to Him. When you give Him your burdens, He renews your soul and gives you a peace that surpasses all understanding. 3. Trust that God is guiding you. Even when you can't see the path clearly, believe that He is leading you. He has a plan for your life, one that takes you toward righteousness, peace, and fulfillment. Psalm 23:3 reminds us of a profound and comforting truth. God doesn't just walk with us through difficult times. He restores our souls and leads us along the best path. When we feel worn out and lost, we can turn to Him, knowing that His restoration is complete and His guidance is perfect. I have seen their ways, but I will heal them. I will guide them and restore comfort to Israel's mourners. Isaiah 57:18. Have you ever felt that your mistakes have distanced you from God? We've all had moments when we felt that our decisions, our paths, or the circumstances around us have left us far from Him. Perhaps you feel you've made wrong choices, strayed from the right path, or been wounded by life's hardships. In those moments we ask ourselves, does God still see me? Can He restore what has been broken? Isaiah 57:18 answers those doubts directly. God says, I have seen their ways. He has seen your struggles, your falls, and your twisted paths. But the incredible part of this verse is not just that God sees, it's that despite what He sees, He promises to heal, guide, and comfort you. No matter how far you feel you've wandered or how deep your pain is, God doesn't leave you in that place. He calls you back to His healing embrace. God sees everything you go through. The first thing Isaiah 57:18 tells us is something surprising. I have seen their ways. Sometimes we think our lives go unnoticed, that our internal struggles, the mistakes we make, or the wounds we carry are hidden from God. But this verse reminds us that God sees everything. He is neither distant nor unaware of what we're going through. Maybe you've made mistakes that have caused you pain or affected others. Or perhaps life's circumstances have been tough and you feel no one understands what you're going through. But God sees it all, not just the decisions you've made, but also the pain behind those decisions and the emotional exhaustion that has led you down certain paths. God doesn't judge you. He understands you. And even though He has seen every step you've taken, He doesn't abandon you. Even if you feel your ways have been wrong or you've strayed from what you thought was right, God says, I have seen your ways and I will heal you. God promises to heal you. The most powerful promise in this verse is when God says, I will heal them. No matter how broken you feel, how many wounds you carry, or how deep your pain runs, God has the power to heal you completely. This healing isn't superficial. It's a deep restoration that reaches every corner of your life. Perhaps you carry emotional or spiritual wounds that others don't see. Wounds caused by rejection, betrayal, or failure. These wounds can leave marks, making you feel as though you'll never fully heal. But God doesn't just offer temporary relief. He offers complete and lasting healing. God doesn't simply take away the pain. He restores what seemed lost. He gives you back the peace, hope, and joy you thought you'd never experience again. God is like a doctor who doesn't just treat symptoms, but heals the root of the problem. He doesn't only mend physical or emotional wounds, He heals the broken heart, the weary mind, and the wounded spirit. God shepherds and guides you. Not only does God promise to heal you, but He also says, I will guide them. This is a beautiful image of a shepherd caring for his sheep. A shepherd doesn't just heal the sheep's wounds, he leads them to green pastures and protects them from harm. In the same way, God doesn't just heal you and leave you to figure things out on your own. He guides you along the path you should take. His guidance is perfect, and his plans are always for your good. Even when you don't understand the journey, you can trust that God is leading you toward peace, righteousness, and fulfillment. Whether you feel lost, broken, or unsure of what's next, remember this: God sees you, he heals you, and he guides you. Turn to him and let him restore your soul and lead you on the path he has prepared for you. God doesn't just heal your wounds and leave you on your own. He walks with you, guides you, and protects you. Sometimes, when we are wounded, we don't know which way to go. We are confused, exhausted, and often feel lost. But God's promise is that he shepherds us and shows us the right path. He doesn't expect us to figure it out alone. Like a loving shepherd, he guides us along the path that leads to healing and peace. He takes us by the hand when we don't know where to go. This is especially comforting when we face difficult decisions or overwhelming circumstances. Perhaps you're at a point where you don't know what to do next. Maybe you're facing an important decision in your life, or feel like you've strayed so far that you don't know how to get back on the right track. God says to you, I will guide you. I will shepherd you along safe paths. The comfort you need. Finally, God promises to give us comfort. I will comfort them and those who mourn for them. God's comfort is not like human comfort, which can be temporary or limited. His comfort is deep, lasting, and transformative. It doesn't just ease the pain, it brings a peace that surpasses all understanding. Perhaps you've been mourning something you've lost, a relationship, a dream, an opportunity, or even a part of yourself that feels like it has died. This verse promises that God comforts you in your pain. He sees your tears, understands your suffering, and draws near to embrace you with his love and tenderness. In those moments of loneliness, when it seems like no one can understand how you feel, God is there ready to console you. He is the God of all comfort and promises to fill your heart with peace, even in the most challenging circumstances. Everyday examples of God's healing, guidance, and comfort. This process of God's healing, guidance, and comfort is reflected in everyday life. Maybe you've gone through a period of suffering or confusion. Perhaps you faced a situation where you made mistakes, strayed from what you knew was right, or simply felt overwhelmed by life. But right at the moment when everything seemed lost, you experienced God's healing and comfort in an unexpected way. Maybe it was through a prayer, a conversation with a friend, or a Bible verse that touched your heart. God has surprising ways of reaching us in our darkest moments. He doesn't just heal our wounds, but also guides us through confusion and pain, ensuring that we never walk alone. Even when we think there's no solution, God opens doors and brings restoration to our lives. How to experience God's healing and guidance. 1. Acknowledge your need. The first step is recognizing that you need healing and guidance. You can't do it alone, and God is ready to help you. No matter how far you feel or how wounded you are, God is ready to restore you. 2. Seek God's presence. Spend time in prayer. Seek God in the midst of your pain. He is close to the brokenhearted and promises to heal your wounds. 3. Trust his guidance. Even when you can't see the way, trust that God is guiding each step. Pray for him to show you the right direction and lead you along paths of peace. Isaiah 57:18 is a reminder that God doesn't leave us in our wounds or mistakes. He sees everything, yet he still promises healing, guidance, and comfort. No matter how far you feel from him or how broken you think you are, God is ready to restore you. Today, you can trust that God not only sees you, but also heals, guides, and comforts you. You're not walking alone. The God who created you offers complete healing and transformative comfort. Surrender your pain, confusion, and burdens to him, and let him lead you to a place of peace, healing, and restoration. a reminder of God's promise. As we reflect on God's promise of healing, restoration, and guidance, I want to remind you that God never forgets you. He sees every step you take, even when you feel like you're walking in darkness. If you're going through a difficult season, if you feel like you're carrying heavy burdens or have strayed from the path, hold on to this truth. God is with you and promises complete healing. He guides you along paths of righteousness and offers a deep comfort that calms the soul and brings peace to broken hearts. Throughout our lives, we all face moments of difficulty, pain, or confusion. But the God who created the universe is also the God who is deeply invested in every detail of your life. He doesn't just want to ease your pain momentarily. He wants to restore you completely, to take you to a place of wholeness where you can walk with confidence and hope. Today, I pray that you experience that divine restoration, that where there have been wounds, God brings healing, that where there has been confusion, God brings clarity, and that where you've felt loneliness, you sense His loving presence surrounding you. The same God who promises to heal you in Isaiah 57:18 is the God who will lovingly guide you to places of peace and rest. May His peace, which surpasses all understanding, fill your heart and mind, and may His mighty hand lift you when you feel weak. If this message has touched your heart deeply, I want to invite you to continue on this path of faith, hope, and restoration with us. Subscribe to this channel where we continue to share messages that will fill you with encouragement, love, and the truth of God. You are not alone on this journey. Together, we can grow in faith, support one another, and remember God's great promises in our lives. Here, you'll find reflections to strengthen your spirit, teachings to light your path, and prayers to accompany you every step of the way. If you're looking for a space where you can nourish your soul and receive words of life, this is your place. Join this faith community where we trust in the God who always heals, restores, and guides. May God bless you powerfully today and always. And remember, the best is yet to come in your life because the God who created you is also the God who restores you. Subscribe now so you don't miss any of these blessings and can walk each day closer to His perfect plan for you. If you'd like to explore more about the impact of faith, I invite you to see how faith can change your life. Discover the power of trusting in God. Dive into this powerful message and transform your life with renewed faith. Click now and let your spiritual journey grow even further.